Hey guys, Legendaray here, and welcome back to another Clash Royale video, and today we have got some crazy Expo gameplay back on the channel. That's right, today I have my friend CandyMan on, and yeah, he's obviously one of the best Expo players in the game so far, pushing up to 7,700 trophies in the entire world. Of course, there are some insane games that I'm about to share with you guys, so I'm going to try and break those games down as best as I can. Of course, huge thanks to CandyMan for coming onto the channel. So of course, I'll leave his Twitter down below. Be sure to go check him out. Also, while we're on that, feel free to leave a like down below and subscribe to my channel for more videos like this one. Also, go check me out on my social media, links down below. And if you'd like to support me in game, feel free to use code Legendaray in the shop. And with all that out of the way, let's get right into the games. Alrighty, starting off this episode with a giant double Prince matchup against Kamikaze07. And starting off this match, he's going to go in with a miner in the safe spot. CandyMan obviously going to catch that with a well-placed Ice Golem right there. The opponent's going to go with Zap to get some quick chip damage. And here, CandyMan probably knows the matchup because he is playing on top ladder, so he usually knows who's playing what. So he goes in here with that offensive Expo. The thing, when you're playing against a giant matchup using Expo, you're going to just want to continue to play that Expo on offense. The opponent is going to almost always have counters for it, but the point of those Expos is for you to out-cycle their counters. So here, as you can see, the opponent's giant nowhere in cycle. CandyMan is right back to his Expo. So here, the opponent goes a Dark Prince in the back, and as CandyMan reaches 10 elixir, he's just going to chill out and focus on defending this push. He goes in with that Ice Golem to do some distracting, which will take care of that, and then he goes in with an Expo in the opposite lane here. As you can see, the opponent's going to spend a ton of elixir taking that out, and he actually manages to do a pretty good job at doing that. And meanwhile, that miner just got so much chip damage on the other side, taking his tower down below 3,000 HP. As you can see, it's such a difficult matchup. That miner is just going to continue to get chip damage, while the tanks that he has in this deck are just going to continually distract his Expo. So, heading towards the second half of this match, CandyMan's going to go in with a defensive Tesla. That Tesla is going to provide value on defense, but also provide value on offense to support an offensive Expo. CandyMan goes with a log, obviously trying to save as much health on that Tesla as possible. Unfortunately, it does not work in his favor right there with a misplaced Ice Spears. But heading towards double elixir time, CandyMan obviously he's got his work cut out for him. There's a Prince running down that lane right there, and a full-blown giant push coming down the lane. But as you can see, a fireball log finishes everything off, resets the Prince charge, while that Tesla is just going to get so much value. Skeletons will come down to distract that Mega Minion, and then CandyMan goes right in with another offensive Expo. But as you can see, Kamikaze has his defensive units all back in cycle. He manages to take down that Prince right there, but the opponent gets the giant down in time, and unfortunately, that is just going to spell doom for this Expo. As you can see, he zaps on it, and yeah, the giant's just gonna damage down that Expo, but not before CandyMan gets some chip damage and also cycles back to another one. So Expo, oh wow, he actually doesn't play an Expo there. Predictive E-Wiz fails, and now CandyMan goes in with an Expo, and now he's got two Teslas on the field. That Dark Prince gets completely shredded, but as you can see, the opponent is right back to another Prince and another giant, and there's just no way for CandyMan to break through. He goes in with a log right there just to buy some extra time, and also cycle back to another Expo, which goes down. And you can see here the opponent has no counters. He has to go in with that defensive miner, but then again, the opponent just cycles back to another one of his tanks, and that's pretty much it for his Expo. E-Wiz here actually does get distracted by some skeletons, and CandyMan gets a lock on the tower. As you can see, by just constantly playing those aggressive Expos on offense, he manages to outcycle the Giant, the Prince, and the Dark Prince, and gets so much damage onto the tower. So now he goes in, once again, just repeating the same strategy, and going in with this stuff. The opponent realizes he needs to get chip damage, so he begins to send in that miner behind right there just to get more damage onto the tower. And now, heading towards the last minute of overtime, he actually manages to take the damage advantage. And so now CandyMan is in a really tough spot. He's in triple elixir, so there's almost no chance that that Expo is going to get any chip damage onto the tower, but he cannot let that pressure go, and he has to keep playing Expo on offense, forcing out a giant in the opposite lane, meaning that he won't have to deal with it in the left. In the meanwhile, skeletons try and mitigate that chip damage, but Zap comes down to get even more onto that tower. As you can see here, he does actually manage to sneak in a bit of an Expo lock right there, taking the tower down to 955, 30 seconds left. CandyMan begins the fireball cycle, but so does Kamikaze, and now his tower's down to 345, 22 seconds left. Kamikaze's tower is just 2 fireballs away, and CandyMan has got the fastest cycle in the world, and he actually manages to outspell cycle his opponent. Insanely close match right there, but you can see how that aggression was just able to eventually lead to a breakthrough with his Expo. Alrighty, next up, CandyMan's on the top. We're going to be against a balloon cycle deck, and these decks are especially difficult, and this variation has so many mini tanks in it that it's just very, very difficult for Expo to break through. So here, starting off the match, the opponent, goes in with a miner, and CandyMan's going to try and catch that as best as he can, and he doesn't want to let that ice golem go to waste, so he immediately plays down that Expo. I notice him do this a lot. He's actually not afraid to go aggressive with that Expo, mainly like I said earlier, because he knows he can outcycle the opponent's Expo counters. So when he has those cycle cards that are surviving with just a little bit of health, you'll actually see him go in with a Expo on offense. So now 2 minutes and about 45 seconds into the match, you can see here CandyMan's just gonna save up his elixir right now and get ready to defend this push. He got an Expo down on offense once again, seeing that Inferno Dragon in the back, forcing out a Valkyrie from the opponent. As you can see, archers right there are going to DPS that down, and now a very, very well placed fireball pushes everything back. Ice Spirit distracts that executioner long enough to allow for an Expo lock on tower. Now he's got a minor Inferno Dragon push. Very, very smart play, playing that Ice Golem to actually drag the Inferno Dragon opposite lane. If he had actually played skeletons, a simple zap would have spelled doom for his tower. So now going into the second half of regular time, both players are actually relatively tied in terms of damage. And now again, CandyMan's gonna just cycle his skeletons in the back and then go in with a log. He doesn't really want to go in with an Expo now because he knows the opponent has balloon in hand, and he's just gonna continue to cycle those archers in the back. Now, as he approaches double elixir time, he's gonna begin to get a little more aggressive with those fireballs, going in with a fireball onto that E-Wiz. He really wants the opponent to make that big push, that big commitment, in order for him to pull off an effective defense, gain a massive positive elixir trade, and then go in with an aggressive Expo. So as you can see right now, Expo and Tesla defensive combination, you'll notice that he uses the 2 Expo and Tesla placements right there whenever he faces a balloon deck. And yeah, 37 seconds left. He's barely taken any extra damage. In the meanwhile, he's chipped the opponent's tower down to 25-22. CandyMan again going in with that Expo Tesla placement right there. The Expo and the Tesla forming a very, very difficult defensive wall to break through. Miner down. Skeletons will try and, mitigate as much damage as possible. And now with those surviving archers, which, died, CandyMan goes in with an offensive Expo. And now, unfortunately, that Expo just got completely obliterated by that Executioner and E-Wiz. But, CandyMan's just perfectly fine with that. He's going to spend relatively little elixir defending that because he knows that that's his healthy tower, and he can afford to split the damage between the two. And now, CandyMan once again going in with that super solid defensive, Expo Tesla combination right there. And yeah, CandyMan actually catching his miner right there. And yeah, there we go, defending that push pretty well. However, the opponent has managed to take back that damage advantage with those sneaky miner hits. But unfortunately, CandyMan knows the opponent has so many mini tanks in his deck that he just can't break through by going in with those aggressive Expos. So he has to make a positive trade on defense and then eventually turn that into an aggressive offense. So this seems to be just the thing. As you can see, unfortunately, he actually does take out those archers, but that leaves the opponent so short on elixir that CandyMan gets an Expo lock onto the tower. Tesla at the bridge as well. Fireball comes down and takes out that entire entire thing right there. Expo once again locked onto the tower. Skeletons catch the miner, and there's just nothing that the opponent can do. This tower is going down, and yeah, as you can see, in this balloon variant, the opponent had so many mini tanks that spamming Expos at the bridge was simply not going to break through because the opponent just always had a mini tank in cycle. So instead, he focused on defending. That way he could gain positive elixir trades, get those mini tanks out of cycle, and then eventually go in with an aggressive Expo when he knew the opponent really committed into a push. Alright, next up against a giant skeleton wizard hog deck. Definitely a bit of an unconventional deck, maybe a deck you guys will also see in your trophy range as well. But yeah, starting off here, the opponent obviously going in with a hog, and CandyMan's just going to go in with a Tesla to finish that off. And yeah, obviously a pretty standard start. CandyMan just going to be cycling his cards in the back, cycling logs, get some chip damage onto the tower, so on and so forth. And yeah, the opponent goes in with a knight in the back, meaning that CandyMan's gonna probably go in with an Expo on offense. One of the opponent's mini tanks is out of cycle, and that forces out a giant skeleton right at the bridge right there. Unfortunately, the giant skeleton's gonna be quite effective at taking out that Expo because, I mean, the bomb's gonna pretty much deal a ton of damage. And yeah, as you can see here, CandyMan does manage to sneak in a bit of an Expo lock before that bomb explodes. So first minute of the match, pretty chill. CandyMan had a bit of an advantage, and here he's just gonna go in with archers, finish off those skeletons right there. The opponent actually does a pretty smart play. He goes in with a high wizard, knowing that the opponent's going to want to fireball wizard with the tower, so he doesn't want to give any fireball value. And yeah, CandyMan just goes in with an ice golem and another Expo. As you can see, the opponent's giant skeleton was actually one card away, so he had to play a knight to get back to it. He still has to play that giant skeleton, meaning that his opponent is just so low on elixir. Meanwhile, CandyMan places down that Tesla, which is just going to get so much value, taking out that knight, taking out that giant skeleton, and finishing off that hog rider. A log is going to prevent any hits onto that tower right there. And yeah, as we head towards double elixir time, the opponent does have a bit of an elixir advantage, but so far, nothing too major has actually happened in terms of tower damage. So as we head into double elixir time, CandyMan's gonna turn things up with an Expo right there. The opponent's gonna split those skeletons right there just to provide enough distraction for him to cycle back to his counters here. So obviously the opponent just going to go in with a fireball, trying to begin that spell cycle to get as much tower damage as he possibly can. And meanwhile, CandyMan's just going to reset, cycle back to another Expo, and then go ahead and play that down, knowing the opponent's giant skeleton is not in cycle. So he also plays a Tesla right there, knowing that the opponent does not have any mini tanks in cycle. And unfortunately for the opponent, he misplaces the knight, and the Expo gets a very valuable lock onto the tower, forcing out a tornado as well. And CandyMan right back to another Expo right there, and the opponent is so low on elixir, he's just scrambling to get his cards down in time. He gets a knight down in time, but again, he's just so low on elixir. And meanwhile, CandyMan's back to another Expo, so even if he takes out this Expo, which he does, he gets another Expo down immediately, and the opponent has nothing. He is so dry on elixir, and meanwhile, CandyMan has an Expo Tesla at the bridge, dealing so much damage. He takes the tower down to 543, which is just 2 fireballs, and of course with 2.9 he can cycle that super duper quickly, going in with that first fireball, and not even an issue. He cycles back to the second fireball, finishes off the game, and as you can see right there, by using some smart defensive plays, he baits out the opponent's major tank units and then capitalizes on that by going in with aggressive Expos. Okay, next up we're going to be against a Pekka Control bridge spam type deck, and this variation is going to be running the skeleton dragons as well as the lightning. So definitely, in my opinion, a bit harder because the lightning can pretty much just one-shot a Tesla as well as get significant damage onto an Expo. So starting off again, CandyMan cycling his cards, pretty standard start, and the opponent's going to split skeleton dragons in the back. CandyMan again just pretty chill right now. No reason for him to actually go aggressive at the current moment, and the archers are just gonna take down those skeleton dragons, no big deal. Opponent goes in with Bandit in the back, and CandyMan's just continuing to cycle all of his cards, and gonna also defend that Bandit as well. Now he's gonna go in with an E-Wiz. CandyMan, thought about fireballing that, but it was a little bit too late, and instead he goes in with a Expo in the opposite lane, meanwhile taking care of that E-Wiz with some simple skeletons, and then he's gonna begin DPSing down that Pekka. As you can see, the opponent's deck's actually more on the expensive side, so he's actually rather dry on Elixir, and CandyMan's just gonna let that Expo go, knowing that spending a Pekka and a Ram Rider on that Expo is quite a significant investment. So meanwhile, CandyMan's just banking his Elixir, he's back to another Expo, and look at the opponent's hand. He's got Bandit and Skeleton Dragons, which, I mean, both of which are not very great counters to the Expo. So, CandyMan going in with that Expo, and what can he do? He goes in with the Bandit, but CandyMan just predicts that with that Ice Golem. He's got that E-Wiz in hand, but unfortunately for CandyMan, that Bandit actually manages to dash onto the tower with the help of the Lightning, finishing that off. But now CandyMan, with a significant advantage, is gonna try and cycle back to another Expo, but the opponent does have Pekka back in hand. But as you can see, CandyMan just not afraid to go in with those aggressive Expos, just like the Giant matchup, and you'll notice him do this a lot. He's just gonna try and outcycle the opponent's counters. So here, Expo down, Tesla down as well, and as you can see, the opponent here just scrambling to defend that Expo, but as you can see, by playing that Tesla in the back, that Tesla actually stays protected and continues to get so much value onto the opponent's troops. And now, as soon as that Expo goes down, CandyMan goes in with a second Expo, and the opponent is again so dry on Elixir that Tesla takes down those Barbarians and the Ram Rider. CandyMan gets another Expo lock onto the tower. The opponent just frankly gives up. He could have lightninged onto the tower, but CandyMan would have just played down another Expo, and there just simply wasn't a way for him to defend. So, as you can see, against the Pekka matchup, CandyMan played rather aggressive the whole match, again getting the opponent counters out of cycle, and then breaking through with that Expo. Next up, we're going to be against a Golem Clone matchup, and Golem Clone, those troops can really stack up if you play those defenses poorly. So, starting off the match again, CandyMan just cycling his cars, the opponent goes in with a Skeleton Barrel, and, pretty simple defense right there. Archers are going to take care of those skeletons relatively effectively, and now, again, CandyMan does not want to let those archers go to waste, so he goes in with that aggressive Expo. The opponent has a Golem in cycle, but he just didn't want to waste those archers. And now, as you can see, the opponent had to play a Golem relatively high, meaning that he now doesn't have too much Elixir to actually support his Golem. The Expo is just going to take out that Golem. Fireball took care of those Skeleton Dragons, and that's a pretty chill defense right there. Ice Golem gonna finish off those bats, and the opponent here goes in with another Skeleton Barrel actually, and CandyMan's just gonna choose to use an Ice Spirit to defend that Skeleton Barrel. Skeleton Barrel, honestly, so annoying. The drop damage does so much damage, and now again, he has a surviving set of archers. He's got Expo in cycle, so he's going to go in with those right there. And here, as you can see, the opponent had to play those arrows onto the archers. Now CandyMan just has that really, really healthy Expo on the tower. And as you can see, a pretty solid push right there, taking the opponent's tower down to 1911. Meanwhile, he's got a relatively solid Elixir advantage as well. So, heading towards the second half of this match, again, CandyMan just going to cycle back to that Expo. And I don't think he's going to play it now because he knows that the opponent's Golem is in cycle. And now the opponent actually Golems in the back in the opposite lane. And now, of course, CandyMan's just going to play that Expo in the opposite lane. And the opponent's just going to let his tower go and try and focus on building up this push in the opposite lane. But the problem with that is now CandyMan's actually going to take that tower, and he now has a defensive Expo that's going to continue to damage down the opponent's Golem. Valuable log protects that Expo a little bit more, and as you can see, by using smart Ice Golem and Archer placements, his push is basically gone. And yeah, he actually goes in with a fireball here onto those bats. He didn't have a very good counter. He didn't want to take that much damage. But yeah, here are 35 seconds left. This is the opponent's last chance to break through on defense, and CandyMan cycles down that Tesla, going in with archers in the back as well. And now the opponent just goes all in. Night Witch, Skeleton Barrel, Clone, archers take out that stuff. But look at this defense. He cycles back to his second Tesla, goes in with this stuff, cycles back to his second set of archers, cycles back to another ice golem, cycles back to everything. He goes in with an emergency fireball onto all of this stuff. That push just somehow miraculously disappears. A desperation clone does not work, and as the timer runs out, CandyMan with a relatively simple victory, although that last defense was definitely a very difficult one to pull off. Alrighty, next up against Jupiter King, who's actually one of the best players right now in the entirety of CRL. And of course, it's going to be a giant Sparkie matchup this time. So, starting off the match, you know, CandyMan with the Expo just cycling the cards in the back. Jupiter King goes in with an E-Wiz right there. CandyMan actually elects to fireball that E-Wiz, get as much chit damage as he can, knowing that the deck has a fast cycle and he can cycle back to another fireball pretty much instantly. So yeah, here Jupiter King, CandyMan actually goes in with an aggressive Expo, forcing out a giant Mega Minion at the bridge. No point in actually trying to defend that Expo and allow it to live. He just instead banks a Tesla in the back right there. Unfortunately, it's going to die to this giant and Mega Minion right there. But you saw what he was trying to do. He was trying to bank that Tesla in the back. That way he would have a surviving Tesla, which would allow him to go in on offense with another Expo. But instead, yeah, that Tesla goes down, and CandyMan is now forced on the defensive end with a big Sparkie push actually coming in his way. Now, as you can see, CandyMan goes in with a defensive Expo, and yeah, Jupiter King goes in with a mini Pekka at the bridge, trying to sneak in a hit onto that Expo, but it does not happen. But, you know, CandyMan still has to defend this giant Sparkie push right here, and as you can see, he does so very effectively by using the freeze of the Ice Spirit very, very effectively, taking that down right there, and basically taking no damage whatsoever on that tower. And yeah, honestly, there's just so much defensive, like, micro interactions that you need to know when defending the Sparkie. But as you can see now, CandyMan going in with that Expo at the bridge. CandyMan's going to try and DPS that down, but as you can see, the Sparkie doesn't actually one-shot an Expo, and the Expo is going to take the opponent's tower down to 27-21. But now Jupiter King fires back with a pretty standard push, you know, giant Mega Minion mini Pekka at the bridge, and then the Heal Spirit actually jumps across the bridge, and yeah, now the mini Pekka approaching the tower. Mini Pekka actually locks on, and CandyMan actually has to use a fireball and a log to finish that mini Pekka off. That Heal Spirit jumping on and healing that mini Pekka and giant really paid dividends for Jupiter King right there. 27 seconds left. Jupiter King goes in with a Sparkie, and at CandyMan immediately goes Expo opposite lane, forcing out a giant, and now that Sparkie in the opposite lane is going to be rather easy to deal with. He goes in with an Ice Spirit right there, you know, Ice Golem right there as well. Skeleton's down, and yeah, Log as well will finish that Sparkie off. Now the mini Pekka is coming down the lane, but a simple kite with that Ice Spirit is going to finish that off right there. And again, rinse and repeat. Jupiter King plays down that Sparkie. CandyMan's going to Expo opposite lane with that Expo. Again, there's not going to be a giant to deal with along with the Sparkie, so he can just take care of the giant in the left lane with that Tesla and those archers, and he's just going to take care of the Sparkie in the right lane with an Ice Golem right there, Log, and then probably some skeletons to finish that off. As you can see, Jupiter King tried to get a predictive zap right there, but CandyMan avoiding that trap right there by playing those skeletons slightly offset. Now CandyMan back with another Expo, but as you can see, Jupiter King now with a giant Sparkie push in the same lane. He's gonna just let that Expo go. He knows there's no hope for that Expo and just banks that Tesla in the back. Sparkie's gonna obliterate that Tesla right there. And yeah, as you can see though, very, very smart placement right there with those archers, and log is going to, mitigate any damage whatsoever onto the tower. And now heading into the last minute of the match, Jupiter King still at an advantage, but CandyMan is going to begin that spell cycle and then going in with that Expo on defense. Jupiter King does not want that Expo to get that much value, so he immediately goes in with a Giant to finish that off. Meanwhile, he's going to try and defend this Sparkie mini Pekka push, which gets actually obliterated by that Tesla, and now he's just going to go with Skeletons, take care of that Giant on the right, and as you can see, he's actually split his damage rather effectively, and now CandyMan just beginning that Fireball cycle once again. 27 seconds left. As you can see, CandyMan's right back to another Fireball, so if he needs to use it on defense, he's just going to use it on defense and take out that entire push right there. Tesla continuing to get so much value. Jupiter King cycles back to a second Giant, but now CandyMan firmly in the lead and just continuing to get spell damage onto the tower. 5 seconds left. Fireball landing onto that tower, taking it down to 1476, and as the timer runs out, CandyMan firmly in the lead by about 500 HP as tiebreaker comes into effect. As you can see in that match, by applying opposite lane pressure with those Expos, he was able to split his opponent's pushes up into two, making them much easier to individually deal with, eventually leading to him being able to just chip away at his tower and just Fireball cycle his way to a win. So there we go. As you can see, some absolutely insane games by CandyMan on ladder. Again, huge thanks to him for coming on the channel. I'll leave his Twitter down below. Go check him out. But unfortunately, guys, that's all I've got time for in today's episode. Huge thanks to all of my channel members. You guys are the absolute G's. If you enjoyed, please leave a like down below, as well as a subscription to my channel. And as always, this is Legendaray, and I'm signing off. See you guys next time.